Ask everyone to please stand for prayer and pledge of allegiance. As we pray this evening, we have a lot of family members. We have a lot of acquaintances, either through work or business, that are battling COVID. We have others who are fighting some terminal illness, and so let's remember them as we pray this evening. Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you that we have this freedom, and we exercise this freedom to do the business of the airport. We pray for wisdom as we go over all of these items tonight. Lord, we pray especially for all of these who are close to us, acquaintances of ours, Lord, who are battling COVID, others who are battling terminal illnesses. Lord, we just pray that you would intervene, that you would bring a healing and strengthening touch to them. Lord, we pray for our nation. We need healing as a nation. God, you intervene is our prayer. Lord, all that we do, may it bring glory to you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
With liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Hitt, roll call, please.
Chair Kirkland.
Here.
Vice Chair Fryer.
Here.
Captain McDowell is absent, and in place Colonel Zinko.
Still with us, Colonel?
Present.
All right.
Mr. Wynn.
Here.
Mr. Cornegay.
Here.
Mr. Richard.
Here.
Mr. Nichols is absent this evening. Ms. Rakowski. Here. Mr. Prang.
Here.
Ms. Whitney.
Here.
All right, and Jim Taylor is also present for presentation. We have a quorum. Chair.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Hitt. Let the record reflect that we do have a quorum. We have not received any public comments, correct?
That is correct.
All right, moving on to item 2 on our agenda, the consent agenda. The financials for October and November had been sent to you previously by email, as well as minutes for our November 17th meeting and the December 1st special meeting that we had. Those are included in your packet, and as I mentioned, they had been sent out previously. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make that motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Unanimous, carried. We'll move to our report status, and we're going to have Mr. Taylor provide us information on the Wings of Dreams and the update as to where we are. So, Mr. Taylor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, David. Good evening, all. Everyone will recall as background, as it concerns our odyssey with Wings of Dreams, that in May we entered into a settlement with Wings of Dreams, to which Bob Ole and Greg Ashley were also parties, which involved, among other things, the conveyance to the airport of all of the assets of Wings of Dreams, with an identification in the bill of sale as to what those assets consisted of, and representations and warranties from Wings of Dreams and Messrs. Ole and Ashley to the effect that there were no other assets that they hadn't told us about. Several weeks later, it came to Maria's attention through, I believe, some information from a tenant that perhaps those representations and warranties weren't true, and that there might be an asset that we had not been told about, that being a 1946 Cessna 140, which it turned out Bob Ole was keeping at Craig Executive Airport up in Jacksonville and had listed on an aviation website for sale through Express Air, his other company. we made an appropriate demand on Mr. Old to turn over the aircraft because according to the bill of sale from the May settlement, it was ours. A subsequent FAA title search confirmed that indeed the title was and remains in Wings of Dream's name. Mr. Old made no response to the demand, so ultimately we filed a lawsuit in the county court for Bradford County seeking possession and title or determination of our entitlement to title to that aircraft by reason of our settlement back in May. The court set the matter for a show cause hearing on January the 4th, which was Mr. Old's opportunity to come explain to the judge why the airport should not be awarded possession and entitlement to title to the aircraft. And in the lead up to that hearing, Mr. Old eventually reached out to us and made it clear that he wanted to settle by just giving us the airplane. By about the time we said okay, it turns out he had flown the plane to the airport, tied it down for us, and delivered a satchel with some, although perhaps not all, of the relevant paperwork for the aircraft, and left. We took that as a sign that he wanted to settle for real, and so we prepared a settlement agreement to wrap around the delivery of the possession of the aircraft to us. As of Sunday, I think it was, January the 3rd, the day before the hearing, Bob delivered that settlement agreement back, signed. He signed it for Wings of Dream, signed it for himself. Greg Ashley signed it with an accompanying FAA bill of sale, conveying the title to that aircraft to the airport. So we have those in hand now. As a result of that, since the settlement gave us what we were seeking in the lawsuit, we dismissed the lawsuit. So that's where we stand. That aircraft is now in our possession, and we are free to file with the FAA bill of sale, which should result in its being retitled in the FAA's records to the airport. And I should add that as part of the settlement, Messrs. Ohl and Ashley reconfirmed and reaffirmed all of the representations and warranties that they had made back in May concerning there being nothing else this time that they had not told us about, that they should have conveyed to us as part of the May settlement, so that if in the future it comes to our attention once again that Mr. Ohl has hidden the ball on us, there's nothing to prevent us from suing him once again to get whatever that missing asset might be. But at this point in time, we don't know of anything that would be in that category.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Taylor. And the board, you'll notice in your packets, there is a copy of the settlement agreement as well as a copy of the aircraft bill of sale. So that's some of the paperwork that we have in place, and we'll be moving forward with getting that over into our name and out of the Wings of Dreams name as far as the aircraft ownership.
So as the next steps process, what's the plan for the C-140? For the Cessna 140, sorry.
So what we've done is we've gotten with Mr. Ken Oddie with County Line Aviation. We had him look at the airplane after it was delivered here, as well as go through some of the paperwork. And he has since done a little more inspection on it. That is a fabric covered wings, and it's they're still in good shape, but there's a time range on those as well before they need to be replaced. There were a couple of other items that just was easily looked at by Mr. Oddie without digging into the logbooks on when the last annual was and any other work that had been done. So we were waiting to make sure that we got all of this settlement agreement signed, and then we will have either Mr. Audie or someone go through the airplane, or we'll go ahead and put it up for sale and let the prospective buyer then pay an A&P. That's typically what you do for a pre-buy or a pre-purchase sale, and they go through the airplane to determine airworthiness, because all the certifications are there, the paperwork seems to be there, so that's going to be our next step, now that we've got the settlement agreement signed.
So the general thought process is to sell the aircraft in the near
Definitely.
future? Okay.
Definitely. Any other questions for Mr. Taylor? All right, hearing none. Jim, we'll let you go. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. Good evening all. I'll sign off.
All right. Thank you, Jim.
Bye now.
Good night. The next presenter on our list was going to be Mr. Bob Britton, but I think he wants to appear on the agenda next month with some updated information about the College of Missionary Aviation. Is that correct, Mr. Britton?
I think I had Morgan table or mute him.
Oh,
So
okay.
we went ahead and I just tabled.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, sir, I was gonna prepare some slides, but I could give you the 2-minute recap and spare the 31-slide presentation next month.
That will work. We'll put you on the agenda for next month.
So you'd like 31 slides? Okay,
He's
Oh, you're saying you,
2 minutes tonight or 31 slides next month?
we'll take the 2 minutes tonight. I misunderstood.
no
Certainly.
problem, sir. On January 5th of this year, the College of Missionary Aviation began its 6th year. And in that time, we've had 9 students complete the program, and they've done so debt-free. Of those 9, 2 are at SOAR Aviation Ministries in Bolivar, Missouri, working on their A&P apprentice mechanic training. Another recent graduate went to Proclaim Missionary Aviation in Worthington, Minnesota, quite a step for a family from Key West. And they're there for a year of internship before going to MARC, Missionary Air Repair Center in Soldotna, Alaska. So it takes us up to number 3 and 4. Number 5 and 6 are back with us doing apprentice mechanic training and working on some mission flight training. And then number 7 is working on building flight time and their apprentice mechanic training at Global Proyectos in Zephyr Hills, and one of the graduates from the June graduation is tossing parachutists out of the back of a 185 at Palatka on the weekends, again to build hours and try to get to that 500-hour entry level for being looked at like MAF, JARS, FNOS 360. So we've got that going on. The rebuild of our Cessna 172 is continuing with the installation of a Dynon Skyview, glass cockpit, and we're wiring up the harnesses and all of that. Both 150s have had new comm stacks put in, not all new equipment, but we just went through and rewired everything, so we've got fleet commonality to aid in student training, and we've got 4 students full-time, and we have 2 that have applied for July, and a 3rd that's working on fundraising to start the program in July of 2021.
Well, that sounds
I
like
guess
good.
that's
It sounds like good
yes,
news.
It's all moving forward. The Lord continues to bless us. A big step forward in our apprentice mechanic training is that we've had 2 more volunteer A&Ps come on board. One, a former missionary who spent some time in Brazil and was in Australia for 7 years, and then in Papua New Guinea for the past 8 years, training Papuans to be airplane mechanics. And you can imagine that's a daunting task because the tests are given in English and not one of the 183 dialects that they practice there in that portion of New Guinea. So it was very, very interesting. And he said it took one guy 7 years and he took the test 10 times before he passed it, but the entire village celebrated for 3 days when he completed that training and got certified as a Papuan airframe and power plant mechanic. So the Lord's blessed us with the talent from Neil and his wife Lois, who did 27 years in the Salvation Army as a social worker, and she's working in Stark, witnessing to folks there and helping at some Christian ministry outreaches. Our other new mechanic comes to us from 27 years in line maintenance at Delta, and then Northwest and Delta Management after the merger. From there, he went to DynCorp and did F-15 and C-5 heavy maintenance at Warner Robins Air Logistics Center. And after that, was hired away to manage maintenance contracts for Richard Branson on the Spaceship One at Virgin Galactic. He retired about 6 months ago and moved down here to the bright lights of Keystone Heights and is helping in the hangar. So the Lord blesses us, and we're able to train these young men and get them, the hands-on experience they need with all of the different facets of what they'll need to do when they take their A&P practical exam.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Britton, for that update. We appreciate that. And any questions from any of the board members for Mr. Britton?
I wouldn't say so. I'd just say congratulations on wonderful activities.
All right.
Thank you very much, Scott. And I appreciate everyone's support of the College of Missionary Aviation. And, we're proud to be a contributing part of the Keystone Heights Airport community. So, we invite anyone to stop down anytime and come and see us. And also let us know in case that 140, when you get it ready to put up for sale, and let us know because, we're always looking for an opportunity to support the local community and also bring more airplanes into our fleet.
Okay, we'll keep that in mind.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Britton. You have a good evening.
Yes, and Maria, if you'll take my 31 slides off of February's presentation, please.
I consider it done.
Great, thank you all very much, and I appreciate your patience in allowing me to do this, and I'm just going to sign off because I have a 6:30 Civil Air Patrol meeting.
All
Thank
right.
you very much.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night. Mr. Prang.
Good night, Chairman. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Mr. Prang, you are up.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Did somebody say 31 slides?
It looks like all of your information in the packet.
Okay, so I didn't know if Morgan was gonna project that onto the screen, or if you have it with you. Morgan, if you have it, you can go ahead and put up number 1. I have a report to you tonight about the apron reconstruction project, and I will be asking you to consider 2 actions. The first graphic you have, I think, is just a reminder of the project limits. We bid the project and accepted bids in December on the 17th. We received 2 bids. Just a reminder to you that the project was broken into 2 areas. One area is on the, if you will, the south side or the west side. Fronts only the single hangar, affects 4 tenants. That was bid schedule A. The second bid schedule is the area between the 2 hangars, corporate hangar and the double stack nested T hangar. It affects 9 different hangars, I believe. And we accepted bids in, got the low bid is from Earthworks LLC. They're located in Melrose. Excuse me, I was using A and B earlier. It's actually bid schedule 1 and bid schedule 2. The bid price for bid schedule 1 from Earthworks was $255,132.39. The price for bid schedule 2 was $276,788.96. And if you opt to construct the whole project with Earthworks LLC, that price would be the combination of 1 plus 2, which is $531,788.96.
$921.35. And I believe in your package you have a letter from me dated December 17th, and then you have a spreadsheet which shows all the unit prices. The second bid, which was quite a bit higher, was from John C. Hip Construction Company from Alachua. I talked to both bidders. Neither one had any issues or concerns with the way the project was described. I think perhaps at the core of the difference between the prices is maybe two things. Earthworks is closer to the project physically, being located in Melrose. And I think this is a type of project that is sort of in their niche, close to home, and just about the right size project for them to take on. And just as a point of reference, Earthworks constructed and paved the parking lot that's associated with your FBO building that you're sitting in now. So they have worked at the airport before. I believe they've also worked for the city. I don't know if Scott or Lynn has any comments on their work experience with Earthworks, but they do good work in my experience, and I recommend you award a contract to Earthworks in whichever combination that suits the board. So that's actually the first point of conversation. Is any of the board members have any questions or comments about the difference between bid schedule 1 and 2? And are you ready to make a decision on which project to award to Earthworks?
Mr. Cornier has a
Yes,
comment.
I'd just like to share with the rest of the board that, as Mr. Prang mentioned, the city of Keystone Heights has used Earthworks many times in the past, and we have always been absolutely satisfied and happy with the work that they've done. So I would certainly be in support of awarding the bid to Earthworks. And I don't know if Lynn wants to add to that or not, but that's my
Okay.
recommendation.
That's good to hear.
What was the, if we had both 1 and 2 at the same time, what was
Okay.
the savings?
If you look on the letter dated December the 16th, Mr. Wynn, you'll find it there in your packet from Mr. Prang.
Okay, there's no changes since we got this before, same,
That's correct.
okay.
So bid schedule 1, bid schedule
The total
2.
bid price for the whole project to Earthworks is $531,921.35.
I would also further,
If you only want to do,
go ahead.
sorry, go ahead, Scott.
Well, I was just gonna say, I'm also familiar with Earthworks. They've actually done a lot of work at University of Florida over there, so if they're good enough for UF and the city,
You think the savings would justify doing both at the same time?
Okay, I would like to interject something here. In your packet, you also will find several pages back, you will find a litigation balance sheet. And I asked Miss Lonnie to pull some numbers together for us so we would understand, because remember, we're funding this project ourselves
100%, right.
with monies that we acquired through the litigation.
Right.
So that spreadsheet depicts what the total income was from that, as well as what we have spent out of that, because the board elected and approved expenditures, equipping the FBO, some things that we needed to do here in the new FBO that was not part of the grant money
Right.
to build the FBO, clearing of the 12 acres across the road here. We purchased a golf cart, which has really come in handy to the staff, and as well as some other folks that come into the airport. So also we subsidized some money to the new bulk hangar. So we've listed all of those expenses that we've taken out of that money. So there's another item there, because our bridge gap funding had run out when we were closing out our projects. We had $265,156 that we paid out of this same litigation balance. And so we're waiting on the FAA to reimburse us for that amount. So I depicted there on the spreadsheet, once we deduct the expenses We have a balance remaining and then a pending reimbursement from the FAA. So we're looking at having $849,511.27 available to us for this project. Now, I've also asked Mr. Prang, and I'm gonna just kind of jump ahead just a little bit here, because I've asked Mr. Prang to begin pulling some estimates together or some ideas as to how we could replace the slabs that are in the hangars, especially in the corporate side. So that's a project that we don't have numbers on yet. Of course, all of this occurred over holidays and the other delays we've had because of COVID. But so I say all of that to ask the board. I think we need to be considerate of what this total cost will be, because now remember, this is just the cost. There's some additional cost that Mr. Prang's going to address here in a minute on the fee proposal, for AECom to oversee the project. So, and again, he's included that in the packet. It's 2 or 3 pages back, and that number looks like $112,000. So,
For A and B, or 1 and 2, how is it listed now?
that would be.
Yeah. So,
You want to
let
address
me add
that?
some clarity to
You want to
that.
address that, Mr. Prang?
Yeah. If you choose to award the whole project to Earthworks, then we would propose inspection services at $112,066. If you choose to award just bid schedule 1, the cost to Earthworks would be $255,132 and change. And because that project takes less time, it would involve less inspection work by us. The inspection for the smaller project is $70,692. And that's based on, the inspection proposals are both based on a 40-hour-a-week inspector to be on site anytime the contractor's working, to oversee the removal of all the easy base and all the reconstructive efforts.
I had some.
Similar to the way we've approached your other inspection projects.
I've had some conversation with Mr. Prang, and because in some other projects we've used some of our own staff personnel, Mike, to do some of the inspection where Mr. Prang gave a list of items to look at every day, every week, that type of thing. What Mr. Prang and I have talked about is, because this is so unique because of the easy base material, we really need to make sure that somebody will be on site while the contractor's here to get all of that easy base and sub base out. We need somebody, with trained eyes looking for that. And Mike will be the first one to tell you he doesn't have it. I don't have it, certainly, and I don't. Chad, now being an engineer and working for an engineering firm, probably would have that expertise. So I've thrown a couple of different things out here for us that's all part of this that I think we need to take into account as we make a decision. Do we go with just the one side of the hangar that's the worst, which is bid schedule 1? Do we do just that portion, or do we do both?
I remember there being a discussion at some point about, obviously the tenants are gonna have a little bit of an issue as far as juggling it. However, if I understood correctly, there'll be bid schedule 1, project 1 will be completed, and then they'll move over to project 2. Is that correct? They will not be done, it will be done separately, such that we're not offsetting all of the tenants at the same time.
I would ask Mr. Prang to address that.
That's correct, Chad. The contract includes approximately 6 weeks for both phases of work. So you would do bid schedule 1 first, displace 5 tenants, I believe it is. And once that's complete,
put those tenants back in their hangars, and then you work on the other side for the next 6 weeks. So there wouldn't be any period of time when all of the tenants are displaced at the same time.
Bill, what would the engineering services and inspection be for bid schedule 2? In other words, what I'm trying to determine, is there a discount for you taking care of both of them at the same time, or would it be less money for bid schedule 2, less than that 70,000?
Yeah. So, Scott, that's a great question, and I could give that to you in pretty round numbers. The smaller project, our fee is $70,692, and
It's 41.
both you can see from the earthworks prices, both pieces of work are pretty much the same dollar value. So, I think the question you're asking is, if we were to do this at 2 different periods of time in history, I would charge you $70,692 twice, roughly $140.
Okay.
If we do the project all as one, my fee is $112. So there's about a $28,000 savings to AECom services to do the project all at once.
Okay, so another question. JEA has agreed to take this easy base back. If we delay bid schedule 2, would we have to renegotiate that with them again if that's a year from now? And is there a possibility
We
of
would have to
denial?
ask the question. We would have to ask the question again. They have a case-by-case policy. They don't take a lot of this material back anymore. I think they did take a lot of it back several years ago when there was several actions early in when the material was being sold. It has to go through their legal department. So yes, I think we would, if we wait a year, we would have to ask again. I think there's at least a little better than 50-50 chance they would say yes again in a year, but I have no guarantee of that. We kind of came to them with, they get to reuse the material. Of course, they're going to reprocess it for their own purpose. They don't necessarily get any value. When we came to ask them, will you take it back? It was more that they were acting in good faith, not that we were bringing them something that had value to them. So I wouldn't classify it as a negotiation per se, but we would have to rely on their good faith a year from now or more to ask them to take a second batch of it.
Okay, and so if in a year from now they don't take that, do we have to pay landfill fees to another private party? If they won't take it back, would we have to pay on, let's say that bid schedule 2, we might have to pay landfill fees?
Correct. And perhaps you're going to ask, I wish I had looked this up ahead of time, but I can find it quickly. Somebody's bound to ask, what's this stuff costing us? I did talk to Earthworks. He's going to haul it back to Jacksonville, and his price to haul that material back to Jacksonville is $57,462 for bid schedule 1, and it's $57,738 for bid schedule 2. So round numbers, $114,000 to haul that stuff back to North Jacksonville and dispose of it. That's not just the hauling, that's the digging and, the whole process.
So I guess,
That's not an inexpensive item.
right, so you have answered my question in 2 ways. So if we delay bid project 2 or bid schedule 2, engineering is going to cost us roughly $28,000 more, and we gamble, or it's a roll of the dice, on landfill fees. Although if we had to landfill it and it was close by, we may save some of that on transportation, but that's kind of hard to say at this point, I guess.
So I just would offer, Scott, and I'm not lobbying one for the other, this will sound like it has editorial in it, but they did have, both bidders had the option of short haul and paying a landfill fee. but apparently that was more expensive than the longer haul
Yeah.
and no fee. So I think that would probably still be a more expensive option if we were to do that a year from now, in your example.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and David, I don't know if it helps, total numbers are sometimes more meaningful. So let me just offer, without the pennies, the total numbers. If you were to award bid schedule 1 only to Earthworks and engage AECom for the smaller inspection services contract, that total is $325,824. If you were to engage Earthworks for the whole project and AECom for the longer inspection services, that total is $643,987. Give or take twice as much. Pretty close to being twice as much, because the second construction project has more construction value than the first one. And I know the reason I offer the total dollar is, I know earlier you said this is the balance in that fund, and it might help the board members just sort of assess what you think, how much of that you want to spend on this effort, as opposed to preserving some of that litigation funds for other expenditures.
And I did a rough tabulation as well, and if my math is fairly accurate, even after the expenditure associated with Earthworks, bid tabulation 1 and 2, engineering services, CEI, that would give that balance, the differential available will be $207,000.
I crunched the same numbers, and
So did I.
so the I want us to discuss this because I've been in Mr. Bailey's hangar, the very end hangar of the corporate. That floor just continues to move. I hadn't been in there in months, and we're still seeing movement there. Some of the other, as you get closer to the taxiway, it's kind of interesting. Of course, County Line Aviation is on the end hangar, and it's not as prevalent there, but as you work your way back toward that end, we see more of that slab inside the hangar separating, and
There's a 6-inch drop, I think, in there at one point.
Right.
Slab height.
yeah.
It's
So
broken. It's terrible.
So here's the option. We could do 1, which is the bad side, where all the Humpty-Doos are now. And then we could then look at what's left from that money, seeing what that would cost, or after Mr. Praying would have to pull together some numbers for us, to see what it would cost us to pull that slab out, pull those slabs out, and all that fill, and go back in with fill and re-pour a floor. It's just,
Now, are the footers in good enough shape? Because you can't disturb them. The footers the building is saying on.
well, I think the large piers that are at each of the main red iron steel frames, I don't think those have moved. I do know that during the litigation that our engineer for the airport had mentioned at the trial that the elevations had not changed. They had taken elevations when they completed the hangars with the as-built, so it's recorded on the as-built, and then during that litigation, and our engineer that Mr. Taylor hired had a surveyor go out, looked at those, and they had not moved.
Yeah, now E has 28 cracks in the foundation from one end to the other. There's like 6 of them that's more than a 1/4 inch, and the other one's around 1/8 inch. So there is something going on, but not major.
Well, you can see it too as you look down toward the back, the grate, the drainage grate. You'll see probably about 10 or 12 feet of that now is shifting. We're
Right.
seeing some
Out
shifting
in-
there
Out in the apron area.
in the apron area. Right, so it's a tough decision that we've got to make.
Well, here's another thing. So my questions to Mr. Prang are involving a cost savings. But when I listen to what you're talking about, it brings to mind, if we were able to remove that concrete in there and get that out, there'd actually be a double savings. Because if that building continues to degrade to the point of condemnation, then we gotta pay somebody to come and do demolition, which could really, really be expensive. So we get a double win if we do the concrete at some point, because I think we fix that problem in there. But not only that, we avoid demolition costs and salvaging that building.
One of my concerns, at least, is, I don't know if if I understood correctly, he's gonna talk about the concrete inside the hangar, correct? We're gonna evaluate the options for that, as far as the saw cutting the concrete, removing the lime rock base, removing whatever unsuitable soils underneath it, and then pouring a new slab inside the hangar itself, right? So, to me, it would be prudent to get a better idea for what that cost would be, because if you're gonna do project one, you wanna do the slab at the same time and have less interference, and then we can evaluate that. I'm not opposed to doing project one and project two together, but I am concerned that it's possible that there's only $207,000 remaining in this greater fund. Will that be sufficient to do project one and project two and the concrete hangar rebuild as far as that goes?
That's
I
what
don't
we're
think we have
talking
that
about, is maybe
information yet.
doing. So in my mind, after listening to Mr. Kirkland, and this is just for discussion, we do bid schedule one because it's the worst of the ramps.
Right,
And we skip bid schedule two, even though there'd be the savings I'm looking for,
certainly.
and have the concrete evaluated, because it may cost even more than the $276,000 on the bid
Correct.
schedule. And when can we expect these FAA funds? Do we have any idea? I mean, are they within the next
They
30
should be.
days or
Yeah,
60
everything
days?
should be tied up.
Okay.
So that's my thought. After listening to him, I'm starting to realize, hey, there could be additional savings by salvaging that building.
I do want to throw one, logistically, if we do the other side, if you do bid number two, right now, bid one, you're only really impacting 4 aircraft, and I have a place to move those 4 aircraft. On bid schedule 2, I have 10 to 12 aircraft that will be displaced.
Right.
I don't have that many spots for them, and I can tell you those airplanes will not want to be sitting outside. We have nowhere else to put them.
Can someone remind me, on a scale like 1 to 10, I think project one is like a 10 out of 10 for being bad, correct?
Yes.
And then project two, where does that hover around on a 1 to 10 scale?
It's only bad once you get near the taxiway, isn't it?
I'd call it a 2.
Okay.
The worst part is really just inside.
Okay, so the concrete inside project two hangar is equally as bad as project one?
Outside, well,
Your hangars over there are not near as bad.
I think
as
it's
what-
inverted.
He's talking about Mr. Bailey.
Okay,
Yeah,
the
but-
slab is inverted?
I believe the slabs in hangar F are worse than the slabs in hangar E,
they are, except the
but
one.
the
on
apron
this
in front of hangar E is worse than the apron in front of hangar F.
So he's talking about.
Corporate hangar.
He's
Okay.
talking about 1/4 inch deviations. We're talking about 4 to 5
Like
inch
spalting,
deviations. I mean,
yeah.
it's right, it's just.
Right. Well, I mentioned this before, and I don't have a strong opinion yet, though, but when you're dealing with something like that, sometimes you're gonna learn a lot from project one. And perhaps those learning lessons can be applied to project two. We can evaluate and kind of hone the design based on what we learned from project one. But I am very curious to understand how much it might cost to saw cut all that, the hangar concrete slab out, to remove that. I mean, working inside of a building has its own challenges because you can have less machinery, you have height restrictions, other things factor into that. So Is that something that we would want to like
So
consult
those are
with?
tall hangars.
They,
The door opening is much taller. What are they, about 21 feet vertically?
Under
I
20.
think the door opening's 14.
okay, so you can get a backhoe in there, but you can't
Right.
get a big excavator. So,
Right.
I mean, there are some
But
challenges.
you can get a vacuum truck in there.
Certainly,
or, you know.
yeah. Mhm. No, I think there are a lot of options, but
Well, let's ask Mr. Prang, how long would it take you, is that a big deal to do the concrete evaluation? Could we start bid schedule 1, and while it's going on, you give us an evaluation on the concrete?
you're gonna wanna work
So
with
this
the
was my,
company first.
my approach to getting a price for the concrete was gonna be twofold. One is I'm gonna put one of my cost estimators on the task of just developing a cost estimate to remove the concrete, remove I don't think there's any lime rock below that concrete, so it's probably sitting directly on easy base or mixed easy base. So we're gonna remove the concrete, sort of cutting out inside, preserving all of the columns, not disturbing any of the column footers. I believe the column footers are stable, probably because the footers are larger and the movement in the easy base has migrated towards the path of least resistance, which was the slab. And then the second, I mean, I have an estimating team that could give me that number. They haven't started on it yet just because of workload. The second thing is, once we have earthworks engaged to do something, I think they'll be interested in giving you a price to do that work as an add-on to the project. If they're working in the hangar, in front of the hangar, they may give you a price per each to say, I can remove that slab and replace it, and on a per each basis.
Are all of
You know,
them
that's two
equally
options.
problematic? Or does each hangar need to have slab replacement?
Well, like you were saying, all
Some
these
are
hangars
perfect,
not
some are
as
worse
bad.
than others.
Yeah.
And what's gonna happen when you fix one end? Is it gonna move the problem back down there, and is it gonna start
You
being
probably have to
bad?
get them all done. Because mine's tough.
Scott, I don't think that would happen. I think, let's just say, we've got 5 hangars in a row. If we remove the slab in hangar 1 and remove all the easy base, put back clean sand, a gravel layer, and new concrete, that one should be stable. It's not gonna cause hangar 2 to move. Hangar 2 is gonna move or not move on its own merit, not because hangar 1 got fixed. The
Okay,
soil does not have that much horizontal influence,
okay.
even if the soil is expanding.
Bill, I had a question on the,
So you,
on hangar E. Is there a footer in between the one side of the other? In other words, project 2 is half of E. Project E is on its own. You follow me? Is there a footer in the middle of those buildings?
you mean, is there a footer down the center spine of the building?
Right. Yeah, if I walked in my
No,
door and
the
walked
long
through the wall.
dimension?
Yeah. Because you've got,
There
half-
would,
Go ahead.
there's only footers, there's not a strip footer, a linear footer, there's only footers there under the columns.
On the outside.
There's no footer under the part. Yeah, there's footers around the perimeter of the building, and then, I don't think that one has any interior columns. Actually, it probably does have some smaller interior columns. There'd be footers under those, but they would be square footers isolated underneath the column. But the partition wall, the metal panel wall that separates your hangar from the hangar on the other side, there's not a ribbon strip footer under that wall.
So it sits on the slab.
I think,
The slab continues out of one side and the other. So if you
Yes.
do the west side, can you join those up in this, say, 4 inches of concrete, 6 inches of concrete? Because by the time you jack one down, it's going to end up being lower than the other.
Are you talking about as they repair one section? will
Yeah,
they
because
be
you're
able to make it
repairing
to
the
the
floor
next?
on half a building, and if it's just solid floor and you're
Well,
fixing one side.
that would be part of their evaluation, I guess, I would imagine.
Yeah, right now, I think the focus is on the corporate hangar,
Yeah, the corporate hangar for the flooring,
because those slabs are the worst.
right.
But it's not to say that when Mr. Prang has his estimating crew go in and look at that, he can give us prices for both hangar E and corporate hangar.
Mhm.
So,
All would be both sides,
yes,
flooring.
yes.
Oh, okay.
I think our intent by doing it this way was that we had hoped at least that we would get a value based on the volume of the work. Well, it turns out that they're about the same as far as the construction cost. The only real value that we're seeing is a $28,000 discount from a CEI services. After going through this operation and here, and I'm trying to remember, I haven't been inside all these hangars. I've seen the apron areas. Obviously, it's expressed to me that Project One is absolutely terrible. We've had a prop strike there before. It's a known issue. Ms. Hitt talking about the displacement of perhaps 12 aircraft in the other set of hangars. That could be problematic for us logistically. My thought is, let's see what happens in Project One and evaluate, what it costs for the hangar slab replacement, and then see if there's sufficient funding to merit doing Project Two, and make the decision based on 3 to 4 to 5 weeks of just going through the process and learning how disruptive it might be, learning, how much it costs, all the other things that may have to mitigate.
Yeah,
And there's not gonna be this big savings that we had hoped for.
Yeah, you might say, but there's a big inconvenience on what we're gonna do with those other aircraft once you pull them out.
What do you need
Go
then?
with the original
You need
plan.
in the form of a motion whether we go forward with one project or the other.
Yeah, Mr. Prang, you had a comment?
Well, so this goes against my nature in one sense, but, so let me just offer another perspective, some other piece of information that you don't know yet. Lynn, you can confirm this, but I believe yesterday you awarded a contract to Earthworks for a city project in some mill and overlay, is that right?
We're moving forward. They will be awarded the project next Thursday. Our council meeting was postponed. But
Okay,
yes, we
so
do have those
I had
contracts
talked
with
to-
legal.
I had talked to Herb, and Herb had asked if he could do the city project first, based on an urgency there, and then start your project in the first week of March, around the March 1 timeframe. Right now, it doesn't matter to Herb whether you award him bid schedule 1 or 1+2. He would just like to start whatever project he gets around March 1. And so this means I don't absolutely have to have a final decision from you today, as long as you'll commit, if you don't commit today, to commit at the February meeting. So we have time to react before the 1st of March. And the other thing I would suggest is a hybrid approach could be something like, I think maybe what Chad is suggesting. You could award bid schedule 1 and the smaller contract to AECom and start that train moving. And if in February or at the March meeting, you get more information about the cost of slab removals, you could, I believe you're spending your own money, so you're not under normal rules of FAA and FDOT procurement. You could possibly amend that award to include the second half of both of those contracts, as long as the work is still in progress. Now, what you couldn't do is wait until June, when the first piece of the work is over and all the equipment's gone, and then award the second piece, because he's got then to remobilize and bring all his people back. But if you tell him, I want you to do the second piece while he's still in the early parts of doing the first piece, I believe he would accept that extra work at the cost he's already bid. As would we. You could amend our contract from 70 to 112 while we're already in midstream. So you have the chance to award this incrementally. If you want to award the smaller piece pursue more information on the slab removals in the next 2 months. And then if you choose to award the second increment, I think you can do that. Was that clear or confusing?
No, it's clear.
That's clear. Makes sense.
Bill, one other thing that we have not discussed.
Yes.
What about the Governor's Road, that apron? We talked about that in the last meeting. Is that included in bid schedule 1 or bid schedule 2 to get the loose, you're gonna just do a thin overlay?
It's in bid schedule 2, Scott, but it's a pretty small piece of work. It's just a couple $1,000s. It could be done with bid schedule 1.
Okay.
If all you award is bid schedule 1, you could fashion your motion to say bid schedule 1, including the Governor's Road repair, and we can just put those 2 pieces of work together into bid schedule 1.
Yeah, because just a line item we can add to.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
All of this is line items, by the way, so.
All right, Mr. Cornigat?
Bill, you may have already said this, but how long do you think it'll take to get the cost estimate for the concrete work?
I think I'll have something by the March meeting.
Well, you're just basically working with volumes, right? And then it really comes down to what the contractor would propose for a cost of removal and then reconstructing a new slab.
Yeah. I think the thing that's complicated there is what you've already mentioned. It's a small workspace. The production's going to be slow. So an estimator can't just go to, say, of his database, bid tabulation database or a means database and pull a number. They're going to have to actually do production type estimating. And Mr. Wynn brought up a very good point about you're going to be faced with, I'll just say, unique concrete joints where you join a new slab to an adjacent older slab that's subject to movement. Those are probably all going to be expansion joints. And I guess one of the things I've thought about from a structural point of view is we think those column foundations are not moving, or they're moving in a very small increment. I don't think anybody, I would not want to physically connect a new slab to old concrete that still has easy base under it. So when we float a new slab in to the center of a hangar, we really have to view it as a floating slab. It's not going to be connected at the perimeter except by an expansion joint and joint seal, meaning we may still have movement over time, but that movement would occur at the perimeter, and you might have ongoing maintenance to say, hey, that's moved a half inch, we need to replace that joint seal. That's way down the road, but planning that jointing is we're gonna have to cost that, because that's not a standard joint to have a floating slab in the middle of a fixed slab.
All right, what's the pleasure of the board?
And we're,
Go ahead, Bill.
Go ahead, Bill. You were about to say something else?
well, I love definitive choices, but again, I'm not against, if you guys want to table this and think about it, maybe each of you needs to take a walk through these 2 hangar buildings, or go ahead and award the first increment, walk the hangar buildings, get some more information before you award the second piece. We can make it happen either way.
All right, thank you, Mr. Prang.
I'll make a motion
Yep.
that we go ahead and go forward with bid schedule 1, amended to include the Governor's Road repair. And that we evaluate the concrete in the buildings of the corporate hangar.
I'll second that.
All right, any other questions about the motion?
Okay, how about AECom? They have monies in this also.
That's a
Separate motion for that.
Separate motion.
Separate motion.
Scott, can I have you to include the amount?
Yes, okay. So, we'll make a motion to award the bid schedule 1 in the amount of $255,132.39 with an amendment To include the Governor's Road for whatever amount that may be, not to exceed, let's say, $10,000.
10,000.
Thank you.
Okay?
All right.
I'll
Mr.
second.
Charlotte, second, still
Yes, sir.
good?
Yes, sir.
Any questions about the motion?
Okay, on as far as moving aircraft and all out, we need to be given 2-week notice, 3-week notice.
Well, that's the logistics. We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
Let's talk about the motion. Any questions about the motion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, approved. All right,
I'll make a motion to engage AECom for their professional design engineering CEI services for bid schedule 1 in the amount of
He may have to give, was it written in?
70,692.
$70,692.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second to award AECom for that C construction phase services. Any questions? All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. All right.
Get her done.
All right, Mr. Prane, bid schedule 1. We want to go with that for now and look forward to, as soon as you can have your estimators put those numbers together for the concrete replacement in the slabs, the floors.
Can they, when they do that, Bill, can they do that,
By unit?
yeah, unit by unit and collectively?
Yeah, I think we'll break the cost estimate down per hangar.
Okay,
And then the collective would just be the sum of all 14.
14?
And between, well, I think there's 14 total hangar units, right?
Yeah, there's 10
Yeah,
and 4.
5.
And-
Oh, you're gonna go ahead and do the others over
Four.
there too, okay. I
Well,
thought we were just
look
doing
at-
corporate.
Yeah,
Yeah, right,
well, I
right,
got an
I forgot
estimator
that.
on it, I'm gonna look at all of them.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, are you,
And I will endeavor, go ahead.
so are you gonna provide a qualitative assessment or a quantitative assessment for like how you would rate the, lack of structural integrity or spalting or alligator cracks or whatever is associated with for each hangar so that we can kind of have a general assessment that would be done by one specific individual so it had some carry through with it?
I was gonna say, before the next board meeting, I will endeavor to work with Maria, get inside each hangar and try to assess a level of severity and prioritize them. You know, I think at some point, you're gonna get down to say, you know, these maybe 2 or 3 are category 1, they're all just as bad as the others. So they may fall into categories, but I will make an assessment of that and coordinate that with what Maria hears from tenants to make sure that's consistent. And I'll try to present that at the next board meeting. I may not have the estimates until March, however, but I will provide the assessment based on my visual inspection before the next meeting.
And Bill, if you will, include the bathroom that's on the end of that hangar E. We need to look at that as well.
Okay?
All right, thank you. Anything else, Mr. Prang?
No, I'm gonna turn my camera off, eat my dinner, and stay and listen.
All right, thank you very much. Ms. Whitney, good to see you. Happy New Year to you.
Good evening, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
I really don't have a lot of updates. Just want to let y'all know, and Mr. Kirkland and Mr. Pitt knows, that we're gearing up to start our new work program cycle and have scheduled our work program meetings to build our 5-year work program with the airports. So we're meeting with all the airports in February, and Keystone's meeting is February 8th. So we are just going to be building the new 5th year, which is 2027, and I can't believe it's already time to do this again because I feel like we just finished last year's. But anyway, we start in the spring usually trying to get this done, so we're getting a head start on it. But everything else is going well. we're still teleworking some at DOT, so, I guess that's gonna be the new normal for us. So I'll probably be teleworking about 3 days a week, but everything else is going well, and that's all I have.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Whitney. On the
Thank
items,
y'all.
good night.
Good night.
The first item I have is a reminder to our board about city seat number 1 is up for reappointment. That term is up. That is Mr. Nichols' seat. And Ms. Lynn, I'm going to ask you to address, because this is something that the city does. It's not what the board does. It's a function of the city and the city council. So I'm going to ask her to walk through that process for information.
City Seat 1 will be up on our website, and then language will be sent to Ms. Hitt by the end of this month for advertising starting beginning February. We'll be putting an ad in the paper February 18th. That'll run for just the 1 week. We'll be accepting applications through March 31st to be appointed at our April meeting. Because of elections, I'm unsure on that date yet. That's something that council will have to discuss. And then their first meeting here, they'll be sworn in May 5th.
All right.
What's the next election cycle? Where is the next election?
The next election for, we have 2 council seats that are up, and that election will be April 11th or 12th, the second Tuesday in April.
Okay.
All right, so we wanted to bring that information to you. Another point that I have are bylaws. The bylaws that we presently have, I think, were done back in, what's the date on that, Maria?
1998.
1998. Since that time, there have been several changes. The airport name. Some of the more important things is the actual organization of the airport administratively, from what's reflected in the bylaws. So I've given those to, I asked Ms. Hitt to send those to Jim Taylor for him to review them for some other legal issues that may need to be addressed in those bylaws, additions, deletions, changes. Another example is nowhere in our bylaws do we list what type of entity we are, and that's important because that came up in our litigation lawsuit. That was a first item that they brought to the judge to say we weren't a legal entity. So those kind of things are being addressed and will be placed in those. We will bring a draft copy of that as soon as we get it back from Mr. Taylor. We'll get that to you guys for your review, and then we'll decide either at the February meeting, if we should have them back by then, whether we
Chairman,
want to do that.
I do want to say too is that what we did is we're finding that way back when the authority was formed, we adopted some blanket policies that the FAA that were aligned with just being an airport, but we also just adopted really whatever the city had.
Right, like
And
purchasing
so-
policies, et cetera.
Exactly, and I think that over the years, we've seen, hey, wait a minute, we really need to be tailoring this to more of what our business type is. But at the same time, what we're recognizing and what Lynn's bringing to our attention is that we really do need to stay consistent with many of the policies that the city has. So Lynn really sat down with us too, and as the 3 of us said, hey, wait a minute, we don't even use this part anymore, let's take that out. Then we threw that out to Jim Taylor to make sure that on the legality side that everything is where it needs to be.
The city has some ordinances in place that the verbiage doesn't really mesh with what our bylaw verbiage is. So that's another reason that we recognize the need to get this updated and brought back to the board. And that way, it's not that we're out of compliance with anyone, it's just that we realized after getting in and reading those that the way they were initially set up just doesn't reflect the business model of what we have now, as well as some of the legal issues and some of the ordinance verbiage too. So that's the reason that we're going to bring that back to you. So we wanted to make you aware of that.
I think Mr. Taylor will help us tremendously with that first read, that first run through, and crossing out what needs to be revised.
And Marie and I and Lynn, we had already gone through it and we had made some changes and with verbiage for his review. So we should be hearing back from him, and we'll get that to you. All right. The next item is board duty assignments. We are up to re-elect a chair and vice chair. I have not listed there the secretary and treasurer positions, which are actually listed in our bylaws as positions, because, as we know, over the years, we've not had a secretary and a treasurer that oversaw financials, and our airport manager was taking care of all the minutes, the secretarial part. So, but with that being said, we do need to re-elect a chair and a vice chair. Presently, I am the chair. Mr. Fryer is the vice chair. So these appointments are for 2 years, according to our bylaws that are put in place. So we need a motion for a chair and take care of that, and a motion for a vice chair.
I make a motion that, or do we need a motion or a nomination?
We need a motion because we vote.
Okay, I make a motion that you remain chair, that Mr. Kirkland remain chair.
So I make a motion that you remain vice chair.
Well, you gotta do one motion at a time.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Fryer. I appreciate that, and I will continue to serve. That's the board's vote.
And who
So-
seconded that? I'm sorry.
Mr. Corrigan.
That's
Thank
Corrigan.
you.
So we have a motion and a second for Mr. Kirkland to remain as chair. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And we need a motion for vice chair.
I make a motion that Mr. Fryer remain vice chair.
All right.
I second.
All right. Mr. Fryer, are you willing to continue to serve?
I'll continue to do that if it's the pleasure of the board.
All right. All in favor of the motion to have Mr. Fryer remain as vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, and that is done. The last item I have, and I'm not going to dwell on it a lot, I'm just going to let you know that in your packet, there is a handout that Maria and I provided to the Clay County Legislative Delegation. That meeting was last Thursday, I believe. Mr. Corrigate was there, Ms. Lynn was there for the city. Mayor Lake had a comment to the legislative delegation, and Maria and I tag teamed this, and we basically talked about the airport, talked about some of our challenges, we talked about some of the things that we need, and so I'll just say it's all on that handout. This is what we gave the representatives and Senator Bradley, and we will be following up with an appropriations request. We had a conversation today with Jeremy Johnston with CCUA, and JJ Harris, Ms. Lynn, Maria, and myself were on a teleconference Zoom meeting and talking about some of the numbers for the water sewer project. And basically last year this was through a DEO jobs growth grant, and it got vetoed by the governor. So we're going to go back again this year with with an appropriations request. So anyway, just wanted to give you a copy of what we presented at that meeting with some of the numbers of the projects that we felt were had priority. With that, I'm done, and I'll move to Mr. Cornegay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things very quickly. On December 17th, I attended the inaugural Clay Leadership Summit at the Thrasher Horn. This is something that County Manager Howard Wanamaker put together, and it brought all the municipalities, the Clay County government, various NGOs throughout the county, and other institutions, for example, the Clay Chamber, the Clay EDC, Clay County Utility Authority, St. John's River Community College. Who am I missing, Lynn? That about it. But you get the picture. It was typically done as a state of the county, which was held today, by the way. But the difference was at the Leadership Summit, there were only appointed officials and directors and managers. There were only 2 elected officials there throughout the county, and they were operating in a capacity of that related to the operational side of things, which is what it was. It was an operational briefing. And each presenter had 5 to 6 minutes to present. And I want to tell you that Maria and Morgan put together a most outstanding PowerPoint presentation that I was able to get up and present to the group. We included some of our past successes over the last year, and we also briefed on upcoming projects that we have going forward. And I can tell you that it was a hit. I got a lot of positive feedback from people in that room, not only there, but since then I've been getting texts and phone calls because the profile of this airport is beginning to, started a year or so ago. We really started to elevate ourselves in the eyes of Clay County and the rest of the region, quite frankly. So there's lots of momentum now with the CCUA and this water sewer project, which is, I believe, one of the most pressing needs and that we should really focus on, which is what Mr. Kirkland did at the legislative delegation. But it was a very good experience, and we'll leverage that and hopefully continue to build relationships throughout Clay County as a result of it. The next thing is in your packet, towards the back, there are 2 memorandums, both from the North Florida TPO, which, as you all know, the Airport Authority now has a seat on the Technical Advisory Committee, formerly the Technical Coordinating Committee. The City of Keystone Heights also has a seat there that the city manager fills. So we have good representation on this committee, which is the committee that puts forth projects to the board for approval. So this is a working group, it's an advisory committee, and it doesn't get done unless that committee recommends it. So we have good strength there. So if you'll take a look at the first memorandum, it says request for study suggestions, Unified Planning Work Program, fiscal year 21-22. There's an appetite right now in Clay County amongst the county commission and others as well, especially our county commissioner, Betsy Condon, to possibly bring in another access road from 21. Well, I think we've talked about this briefly before, coming off of Gasline Road, extending Gasline Road through the southern part of Camp Blanding into the airport property. So we don't have to have our request in until February 26th, which means we've got a little bit of time. We actually meet once more before that deadline. So my request would be that we think about asking for a study relating to that project, a new access road off 21. I suppose in the meantime, Maria and I can talk and figure out the best way for her to communicate with you guys and get your input and get that resolved, and then hopefully at the February meeting we can take whatever action is necessary to move that forward.
My only concern with that is that we have yet to secure sufficient funding to deal with the access road connecting to State Road 100 leading into that new campus.
Right.
So there could be a perception of, well, we need to construct that first and then evaluate. However, from a study phase, it takes several years, 5 to 7 years, in order for an action plan to be developed. But there could be a perception of, well, you're going to go through a legislative appropriations to finalize this other access road leading in, and you're already looking at something coming off of 21, which could be that could be a very expensive endeavor.
Sure. Because
it's a new corridor.
So are we concerned about the perception from Tallahassee, or who are we concerned about?
Well, I presume that would be funded through a legislative appropriations and or FDOT.
The study itself?
Well, I don't know who the study would be funded through.
It would be the TPO.
Okay, so the TPO would elect to fund that independently.
Exactly.
Okay.
Just like they did
Airport road.
Airport Road.
Yes, okay.
So my thought was, why not go ahead and get ahead of it? That way, when we do get done with the 100 thing, we've got this sitting on the table.
Right. The other thing though is that there's already the last study evaluating Airport Road and the needs assessment for that, from a widening, resurfacing, safety, lighting, and that hasn't been funded yet or put into a stream of funding either.
Mhm.
So that's 3 projects that would be infrastructure related that we would have in queue.
Yeah.
That has merit to it, because you're continually investing in infrastructure, but you can only dip so many hands in the pool sometimes as well. So that's just an opinion, that's just what I'm thinking when it comes down to how funds can be allocated.
Sure. But our request, excuse me, Mr. Farrar, our request would be for a study to be funded through North Florida TPO for that possibility of that southern entrance.
Exactly. There would be no, I don't think the intent early on would be to ask for the funding from the state. We would just have the
Sure.
requisite study done and in our hand when and if that time did come.
Yeah.
Is this more like a bypass or a access to airport?
Access to from
So-
21.
Okay.
Which is not a new concept because J.J. Harris with Clay County Economic Development Corporation actually brought that before the legislative delegation last year as a proposal. So
Yeah.
I think the next step would be then to ask if North Florida TPO would consider funding a study to see if merit, feasibility.
For access, not bypass, because it would be a shortcut through here.
For a lot of folks.
100.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask. So in the study evaluation, they would coordinate with Camp Lanning or the Florida National Guard.
Yes, sir.
Is that typical, or can that occur where a civilian highway cut through a military?
Actually,
It's-
it's
Property
skirted
or-
along
Oh,
the
yeah.
edge of
As a
it.
matter of fact, Tyndall Air Force Base is a perfect example.
Okay.
There's a state highway that runs
Right.
Right
through the
through
center.
it, oddly enough.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Just
Fences.
because of its location, though, if you didn't have that, you wouldn't have connection because Tyndall's so large, and
Right.
Camp Landing is quite large too.
Yeah,
when you look at it
it
on,
is.
on the scale of things.
It would be at whenever that time came, there would be an agreement, between Camp Landing and the airport and the state, whatever. But it's obviously doable because it's a common practice.
Okay.
And like I said, it would.
It's Carl Zenko from Camp Landing, so I don't believe there's an appetite. I mean, you could probably come, you call it Gas Line Road, it's really Treat Road. You can come to the gate, but you would have to have a road. As soon as you get to our gate, go around the property onto the airport. I know there were some discussions last year with Mr. Harris from Clay County about going all the way up to the road, using Treat Road, or as you call it, Gas Line Road, all the way up to the road that currently exists that goes out to the flight line that we put in years ago through the grant. And that's not doable at all. So you get a road from up to Treat Road up to our gate and then have to construct the road off. Because what we're worried about is any type of through traffic instead of people using that as a shortcut, not just access to the airport. But now people going westbound that want to get up to, say, up into Middleburg from Keystone Heights or east of the airport or west of the airport, taking that as a shortcut, circumventing Keystone Heights and everything else. So there's going to be a lot more discussion about that moving forward.
Colonel, I didn't realize you guys had gotten that far into that conversation, but certainly that's something that if we do move forward with the TPO study, that would be exposed at that point, and an alternative route, I guess, suggested or at least considered.
Right, and I got one other question. You said February 26th. Is that like the 26th of February this year, or are you talking like the month of February in the year 2026?
No, sir, the deadline for submitting the request, the study request to the TPO is February 26th of 2021.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, that's just the deadline to submit the request for the study. So, in any event, we can talk about it next month if that's something we want to consider.
Yeah.
Okay. The next memorandum is the annual list of priority projects. If you look down at the third bullet, aviation priority requests, I don't know why they left this out, but Jacksonville Aviation Authority and St. Augustine, St. Johns County Airport Authority can each submit a list of its priorities for inclusion in this document. The TPO includes these as a reference, but does not reprioritize these projects. So, once again, there's an opportunity there with the TPO for whatever a wish list of projects that we might consider for here, and I think any opportunity for funding that we can get, we should probably pursue it.
Yeah, I would suggest considering adding Airport Road for the safety improvements that were suggested from the last study to be included as the infrastructure improvement. It's already been evaluated. We have, roughly a good cost estimate associated with it. So, that would be my suggestion. If we're proceeding forward with study, evaluate, fund.
Yep, I agree.
On the current road?
Yes, sir.
That's right.
Yeah, so a mill resurface, expansion of the, expansion of the roadway width, repair of that culverted crossing, and I think and then obviously striping, they need safety edges and striping, and then they also considered lighting in certain areas. Whether or not lighting is warranted is kind of to be
That'd
determined.
strictly be on this road here.
Correct.
It wouldn't
I think
include
it
like a
even-
deceleration lane or widening.
Yeah, well, remember in the report, they gave a list of recommendations, and they listed order of magnitude cost estimates based on 4 different levels of project.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah, so that's out there, and I agree with Mr. Bashar. I think that since the study's been done, documented, let's add that to that list of priority projects.
So a little twist here, if you look back in the top paragraph, please submit your initial priority projects no later than January 22nd, 2021. We understand that formal approval by your county commission or council may take longer, but this request will enable TPO staff to prepare a first draft of the list of priority projects for the February round of committee and board meetings. So whereas we have a more narrow window there, we don't have to take any action as a governing body until later.
What's TPO getting funding from?
It's federal funded, comes
Federal.
down from by federal mandate, every state has to have what are known as transportation planning organizations or metropolitan planning organizations to receive federal funds. So in essence, what they do is mete out federal funding for transportation and infrastructure.
Okay, so if I understood you correctly and read this correctly, so on or prior to January 22nd, we need to share with the TPO our project, and then they will add that to their first round that will then be submitted for review in February.
Correct.
Okay, so is it our agreement that we wish to add this into the TPO's project schedule for their consideration?
Is there a form that they have for each project that we have to submit to them, or?
Have you ever seen anything like that, a form, or we can contact Denise Bunyard, we have a good relationship with all the folks there at the TPO, and we can work through that.
It's kind of like, like the appropriations, there's a form
Sure.
that we have to fill out for
Absolutely,
appropriations
yeah.
type side.
Yeah, we can find that out, and I'll take the lead on that and do whatever needs to be done in terms of submitting. I'll work with Maria.
I think the consensus of the board is we're agreeable that we want to take that airport road TPO study and add it to a list of projects. Okay?
Do we know the last time that road was resurfaced or had anything done on it?
Yeah,
Is that in the-
That's the original.
Was it 86,
No,
Chad?
that's
not
That
the
was-
No, it's
Yeah.
not,
That
it's back in late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah, the original road was one of those
Surf-
rough gravel.
surface.
It was milled and resurfaced in the mid-80s based on the survey and some old plans that were developed. My former colleague did the planning for it, did the design engineering for it.
So when you say like
I think the
80s,
report reflects that.
So it's going on 40 years, or 35 years? Wow.
Yeah, that was way at the end of his life cycle.
Ms. Hitt can send all of us, if you want, a copy of the North Florida TPO study for Airport Road,
Yeah, we got that.
and I think it's in that.
I mean, I can't think of another project that would be more justified when you
Yeah,
look
I
at
agree.
the condition of that road,
I would
the amount of
definitely-
traffic it's receiving, the fact that it doesn't meet standards for width, safety edges,
Agreed.
etc.
Well, the other piece too, that I think would be a huge improvement, just based on the truck traffic that we're getting, is getting rid of this,
Yeah, that
this
chicane.
hard turn that goes back to
Yeah.
the shipping and receiving for Rockland, is to kind of make a much more softer turn, go behind the existing parking lot that
True.
Rockland has right now, so.
Yep.
Yeah, what was nice, there was a ton of options that could be
Yes.
done as well on that improvement. I think sidewalks was even a consideration, but I think just widening, like you said, I think lighting actually would be helpful, but,
Plus
I
the
think it's an
study's already
excellent
done.
project.
Correct. Yeah, if we don't act on it, then it wasn't a good use of funding.
That's right.
Right.
So this is a good opportunity.
I agree. Excellent.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cornegay. We're gonna jump down to Camp Landing updates. Colonel Zico, what's going on with Camp Landing?
Well, I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. Thanks so much. So we're getting back to normal here at Camp Landing. We're back open 3-4 weekends a month, where we were closed down for pretty much 4 months from last April through pretty much July due to the COVID outbreak. We will start to see increased traffic here. Got a few redeployments coming back through Blanding, and then some other deployments going out of here in the next couple weeks. So a lot of moving and shaking going on. I just do want to make everyone aware, we do have a large AT period, our first AT period of the year, which is the last 2 weeks of April, first week of May. Pretty big exercise going on in the installation. And in addition to that, we have the Alabama National Guard coming down to do some training during this time, and they're bringing some rather large artillery pieces and firing the 155, the big rounds here at Camp Landing. So we'll work with the county and let them know that there'll be for about 9 straight days, there'll be continuous artillery rounds landing in our impact areas. And, obviously want to work with the community, let them know of the noise that they may, encounter during those 9 days. And as we get closer, I'll send more information out to the community. So that's pretty much all we have for Camp Landing right now going.
All right, thank you, Colonel Zinco, appreciate that.
Yep.
Ms. Hitt.
All right, I'll cover a facility update here in just a moment. One thing I failed to put on here, since our last meeting in November, I think I had announced in November that Mr. Luke Ford, who's been with us for, I can't believe it, he was with us for about 5 years, he got married December 19th, and he is no longer employed with the airport. He is graduating from FSCJ with his A&P license. He'll be taking his final test, I think, next week. And then he will be going to work for MHD Rockland. In his place, we have hired a young man named Preston Denmark. He came, and I did not make the announcement yet because it's been interesting the last 3 weeks with him, is that we brought him in, he had to do his pre-employment drug test, we were waiting on that to occur. He came out here and worked with Luke for a couple of days just to make sure that this is the cup of tea that he was willing to jump into. And then he was exposed to COVID by his parents, and then about a week after that, then he tested positive. So the poor kid's been quarantined for 2 weeks, but he will come back. We've got a negative test, and he'll start with us officially on Friday. He is currently enrolled with FSCJ, the same program that Luke was enrolled in, and he is also learning, getting his pilot's license with Dean Brock. So he's a tall young man, curly hair, very nice, very well spoken, and the best thing about him is that he's, of course, has aviation background, and we all know what that's a level of expertise that we prefer to have, I think, with our employees, just from the respect level of aviation. Aviation. So if you see him, welcome him. Like I said, a very nice young gentleman, so we're happy to bring him on board. He will be working on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays while attending school. So, our facility update, Mike pulled together a nice detailed report. I'm not going to go through bullet point, but I will tell you that he definitely has been very busy. He's a one-man show around here, spread thin, but for the most part, in our downtime while we're not mowing, he's trying to go through all of the hangars and get them updated and working, functional, get some new lighting in there, and just overall hangar maintenance. We are upgrading the bathroom in hangar A, well overdue, so hopefully that's gonna start, if not the end of this week, by next week. We already have the vanity and the toilet purchased, so
Do that internally or contractually?
we'll be doing it internally. Yeah, Mike has, luckily, he's got that type of background, so, of remodeling. We had to do some repairs, some major repairs on Mr. Bailey's hangar. The motor went out on his hangar door, so we finally were able to get that repaired, and do some replacement of his lighting as well. So that finally got done. Doing a little bit of cleanup work with fallen limbs and whatnot. I did want to bring it to your attention, if you recall back in, I believe it was July or August, the board had voted for a motion for Creative Concrete Design to come in and clean out the trench over by the old FBO that runs between the fuel farm and the fence line. Well, then somehow their office got exposed to COVID, and then it was a delay of 2 weeks, then it was a delay of a month and 2 months, and now they've just stopped returning our calls. So we really have to just kind of go back and look at what those bids were that came in. The next lowest one that came in was Swamp Cutters at $6,700, which was about $2,000 more than Creative Concrete Design. And that would be to do all of the work. I don't know if you want me to bring this back to the board at the February meeting and just update, make sure that Mike was gonna reach out to Swamp Cutters and make sure that they were still gonna be available and still the bid price was still the bid price. But I could bring that back at the February meeting.
Was that the same company that did this clearing work?
Swamp Cutters
They
was
bid
one
on
of
it.
the
They bid on
bids,
it,
right,
yeah.
but actually it was Creative Concrete Design who did the 12-acre clearing.
Okay.
That bid was awfully low when they, compared to the other ones.
Right,
And they're non-responsive right now?
correct,
Okay.
right.
They didn't start any of the work?
No, none of the work has
Would
started.
it be hard just to go out to bid again? Would it be a big challenge? Just to rebid it?
I'd go,
It wouldn't be, and I think if they're not, Lynn, maybe you can help me with this, if we've gone beyond a project when a start time, is there a time frame that expires on these, or is this just something to see if the next bid still accepts or still holds their bid as
That's
current?
gonna be up to those who bid, but typically you can go right down the list.
Okay. I mean, it would save us time if they're still
Yeah.
gonna hold the bid, but we can
Yeah, I
certainly go
wouldn't
back out
rebid
to.
it again, I'd go ahead and try to go with it.
But is there any requirement,
I
To
think she's
rebid.
asking
No,
about
there's
tabulation.
no additional requirements. If it's the same bid,
no, but the fact that that company's been non-responsive for X number of days, is there an X? Is there a certain number of days?
that's something that you need to consult with Mr. Taylor on.
Okay. I'll do a little bit more research with that and bring it back at the February 2nd meeting.
Is there just a lot of sediment in the culvert that needs to be removed? Is that the goal? There's a section of piping that is clogged and that material needs to be removed?
Yes.
It's that
Yeah,
plus
the
the
ditch.
drainage ditch that goes
Drainage.
to the retention pond
Okay,
is completely grown over.
And
okay,
we just don't have the equipment
sure,
for even the clearing part
okay.
to get in there.
So if Mr. Taylor says it's okay, you might also, I guess you're gonna go back to Swamp Cutters and say, are you interested in this? Are you willing to stick with your bid? Is this something that you would entertain, and then you can make a decision from there?
Right,
Okay.
Yeah, I would think you don't need to bring that back to the board, I'd just go with them,
okay,
if everything's legal.
okay. All right.
What, before you move on, you were talking about Mr. Bailey's hangar, did we get the timer on the lights changed to a photoelectric?
Yes, we got,
Both of
actually,
those.
we had,
Do that on E2?
Regional
Echo?
Electric came out
Okay.
and put a timer on, not a timer, but it was a dawn to dusk
Sensor.
sensor for both corporate. So we put it,
And hangar E?
yes, it's just right above that same box that was
Okay,
in Mr.
good.
Bailey's, and then one on E.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because every time the power would go off, the timer gets off.
Right.
And then pretty soon you have the lights coming on in the day and going off at night.
Yeah, and he's come in early just to make sure everything's functioning correctly.
Okay.
And he replaced the wall packs because some of those had gone out, they were old,
Right.
ballast type. And so it's got new LED
Okay, good.
wall
Yeah,
packs.
move
in
the
there.
lights up on the lights.
Electric bills.
Yeah. Yeah, to help.
All right, so in terms of the fuel farm, it is that time of year where we've got our annual audit and inspection coming up, so that's scheduled for the first week in February. Mike's got everything all set and scheduled to make that happen. In terms of fuel sales, thankfully, with Rockland and a couple of other Jet A fuel sales here and there, just over the last 2 weeks, we've sold over 8,500 gallons of Jet A.
So are we exceeding our anticipated, like, monthly averages, or you haven't really
It's
looked
really
at
too
that?
soon, because we were really only into 2 weeks right
Uh-huh.
now, but I probably would say let's give it till the end of February, and then that should give us a good indication. They've given us their schedule through the end of February, but let's just make sure that,
Right.
before we get too excited.
But they gave you the schedule, so we ensured that we had sufficient Jet A.
Correct.
The pipeline is always available.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. And in terms of equipment, everything is good to go. Mike's gone through and replaced a lot of pieces and parts on all of on our tractor and our mowers.
What about our tug?
The white tug, that's what I was gonna report on. Ken from Midstate Power, he replaced the master cylinder. This is the
Great.
large white one that we received from GSA. And so we replaced the master cylinder, flushed all fluid and bleed. The brakes are much better than they were before. We replaced the shoes and adjusters on each brake assembly. And now the tires are dry rotting, so now we're trying to.
Well, it's okay, as long as you can stop on rims.
Yeah, but so they're gonna have to be replaced,
Better on the rims,
and
really.
you'll have to forgive me, I don't recall, the hubs are connected, so they're a dual
They're dual wheels.
wheel, so I think that's a little bit of a challenge in finding someplace here locally. I think Mike was gonna ask Ken if that's something
For
that
the
they
what
do.
now?
For the tug wheels.
The
I think
dual wheels.
The dual wheels to replace those
Oh,
tires
yeah,
on
they
that.
should come off separately though.
never heard
It's like a dually truck, they come off
Yeah,
separately.
the
Yeah.
wheels will come off separately, but the
Okay.
tires will be more like a forklift tire. They're probably like 18-ply tires that are really gonna be high ply rating.
Yeah. So,
I thought we
that's our last piece, and then that tug should be up and moving.
So, or is he concerned about finding, just so I'm understanding clearly,
He reached
trying
out
to find
last.
the tires or trying to find somebody to do
To
them?
do it. He reached out to Beau Revere and he said, I don't want anything to do with those.
Oh,
So there's some in
okay, what
terms
you're
of just-
talking about is locking rims.
Right, right.
And they are
Okay.
deadly. So what he would have to do is get the tires, and a lot of times truck stops will do them. He may have to take them all the way to Baldwin.
Okay.
They put them in a cage, but I know what you're talking about now. It's the locking rims.
Right.
Yeah, just the liability, I guess,
Probably
we don't
could
have the right
put,
equipment for it or
just
whatever,
update
so.
those and put the new type on there.
We could look at that.
Yeah.
I'll get with Mike or
We only got
Wayne and I can
we only
talk.
got $300 in it, so,
Yeah,
I mean, if we put
It's
new
well
rims-
overdue for
Yeah.
some love and attention.
I'll come out and take a look and get with Mike.
The firm has an event coming up this weekend. It's called a rally sprint. They will be utilizing some additional land. They did this back about 5 years ago that crosses over the gas line. They've done the lease agreement. So in case you see any activity, it's for Friday and Saturday,
This Friday and Saturday?
this Friday and Saturday. And get with me if you'll be out, for any reason. I'll show you just what to avoid.
Do we charge them more for that?
Typically, we do. This time, I waived the fee last year, or about 4 or 5 years ago, we charged them $300 for the usage, and I waived it only because of the extensive help that, they were very gracious in not causing, much problem with the, astronaut transporter being stored over there for the past almost year. And Bryn also was very helpful in terms of just helping us with moving a lot of the NASA equipment out on his own time.
Yeah,
So
Are they gonna be doing some kind of activity on the gas line?
they will be doing a rally sprint with
It'll be a
cars.
race. They'll go through, they have a track, I think.
Right,
that goes-
it gets real close
Yeah.
to the gas line.
Crosses the gas
It
line.
crosses the gas line.
Yeah. And that's
Is that
an
where the
agreement
cross is?
with, that's an agreement with Florida Gas.
Okay.
That was done a long time ago, and they
That's,
paid.
that's
to
what I
have-
was thinking about. I
Yeah,
was
they
thinking
paid to
about-
have so many inches of gravel put over top of that.
Okay,
So that's all been an agreement that they have directly with Florida Gas. Then they
Okay.
have an lease agreement with us just for land usage for those 2 days.
okay.
And if there's anything destroyed along the way, then Bryn has always gone back and he does any repair work. So,
It's like a road improvement also when they get finished.
it is, because it kind of helps us in terms of just accessibility back there. So, and the last piece, that in terms of just the facility update, the NASA, I did circle back around with Mr. Dennis Jenkins. Unfortunately, you all made the motions to be able to send off some of those requested items, and since then, most of the items are still going. Moonfall is still shipping all of those pieces directly to Pima. There are some pieces, like the Hubble telescope, that some of the museums have lost funding to carry the extensive trucking and transportation costs. They don't have the funding. So some of the pieces are not gonna be moving, but Dennis is working with us the week of the 25th. They're trying to get some equipment in to get those all loaded up and moved out. Hopefully that hangar will be emptied, and which will help us then move some of the last pieces from the 6 acres down back into that hangar so that we can start sorting out what's left and do a complete inventory. I will give a more up-to-date report probably at the February 2nd meeting. Noel was unable to attend. Woody said that he could attend with us as well. They have some recommendations of what we can be doing with those last pieces that were not claimed by the museums.
Is the Hubble telescope here?
No.
It's the
a
Hubble
mock-up.
telescope trainer, the one that
Okay.
was,
Yeah.
that
Alright.
was, they used as a trainer underwater.
Okay.
and used- Yeah.
Yes, it came down out of the sky.
We can't-
Landed
Well,
right here.
when you said that, I was like, gosh, I sure don't remember that being the case.
Right.
Sorry.
It's a mock-up.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll mock it, yeah.
Did we get any monies yet? I think I might have brought that up for the simulator.
The same, that was processed back in October
It's
or
like
November,
43
Yeah.
plus or minus $43,000.
We already got paid for it?
Yep.
Yeah.
and that got put in,
That's
it's
a good deal then.
nestled in.
And then
our
it's
account.
leaving there going out to Yuma.
Correct.
Pima.
Where?
Pima?
Pima.
The museum in Pima, Arizona?
Yeah, it's good.
Yep.
That's good.
And I did talk to a gentleman from Moonfall, and he sent me a link of some of the pictures that he took after it was set up on the movie set, so I
Will
will
you share that
send you
with us?
that link, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah, I just
cool.
got that the other day, and
Yeah.
so it was pretty cool.
That's a win-win for us, really.
Yeah.
It was a win-win for like
Put it
3
back
or
in the
4 different
system.
parties. It all just played out.
All right, so the last piece that I got on here was employee recognition. If you recall, Mr. Nichols wanted to recognize Miss Bradley. So Morgan, I'm sure that you're listening. He sent me a letter that he wanted me to read in his absence to Miss Bradley. Letter of appreciation. On Sunday, July 12th, 2020, you were the only airport employee working that day, and at approximately 10:20 a.m. it was reported to you there was a dead deer on runway 523. Knowing the importance of providing a safe runway to the aviation community, you rushed out to the runway and found the carnage of a dead deer scattered along runway 523 for about 500 feet, which became obvious to you that the deer had been severed into several portions by the airplane's propeller. There's a visual. You immediately communicated your findings to your supervisor, Ms. Maria Hitt, and airport board member, Mr. David Nichols. While waiting for about an hour for help to arrive by Mr. Scott Fryer and Mr. Chad Bashar, and fending off numerous vultures, you started removing the bloody body parts of the deer from runway. An undertaking that is not part of your normal daily responsibility as a Keystone Heights Airport employee. Morgan, it is important to make sure you are recognized for your efforts and your commitment to airfield safety, and that's why we wanted to thank you at this evening's meeting. Being part of a small staff sometimes insists that we have to solve problems outside of our normal scope of work. And certainly you did that back in July. And also to recognize that a copy of this document will be placed in her file and will be considered during her employee evaluation for a wage adjustment.
Okay.
That's good.
Thank you,
So
Morgan.
thank you, Morgan, for all you do.
Thank you, Morgan, for the cleanup.
It was a graphic explanation of what occurred, but
What's the meat tender?
All right, anything else?
that is all.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hitt. Ms. Rotowski, I think the only thing we had was about the city seat, but did you have other information for us?
I do, and it didn't make it on the agenda, however, we did not have a quorum at last night's meeting, therefore, city council meeting was postponed until January 21st. That's next Thursday, and that'll be held at 4:30 at City Hall. Also, once the bylaws, the revisions have been looked over by Mr. Taylor, then I'll be working with Ms. Hitt and Mr. Kirkland regarding the city ordinances to make sure that everything flows nicely between the city and the airport. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you very much. We greatly appreciate all the city continues to do and the working relationship that we have with the city and the city council. It's beneficial to both parties, and we're appreciative for that. All right, we have concluded our agenda, and the time is 7:52. We will consider ourselves adjourned. Thank you if you joined by Zoom. Thank you, Mr. Prang, Ms. Whitney, all who had called in, listened in. Thank you very much for participating in our meeting. And with that, we are adjourned. And I can't believe, Mr. Corner.